For as long as Erin could remember, her family had whispered about the curse. It wasn't the kind of thing people talked about openly, not in the light of day. The curse was spoken of in hushed tones during family gatherings, muttered under breath when things went wrong, and blamed for every piece of misfortune that befell them. A string of bad luck, illness, financial ruin, broken marriages. It seemed to follow the family like a dark cloud. But no one ever really explained what the curse was. Not in detail. It was just there, a shadow that loomed over every decision, every setback. Growing up, Erin didn't pay much attention to the rumors. She had always been skeptical, more interested in facts and logic than the vague superstitions her older relatives clung to. The idea that some ancient wrong could have cursed their bloodline for generations seemed absurd. Still, the older she got, the more she began to notice the pattern. Strange accidents, failed businesses, relationships that crumbled without warning. It wasn't just bad luck, it felt personal, targeted. And with every misstep, every disaster, the family muttered the same thing: the curse. Erin's curiosity deepened after a series of tragedies struck her immediate family. Her mother's sudden illness, her father's financial collapse, and the mysterious fire that had destroyed her grandparents' home. All of it had happened within the span of just a few years. It was as though some invisible hand was orchestrating their downfall. Even her normally pragmatic mother had begun to speak of the curse with a seriousness that unsettled Erin. "I used to think it was just nonsense," her mother had said one night, her voice low as they sat at the kitchen table. "But there's something to it, something dark in our past. Your great-grandmother, she used to say it was the price we paid for the sins of our ancestors." That was the first time Erin had heard anything concrete about the origins of the curse. The story, according to her mother, went back generations to an ancestor named Thomas Calloway. Thomas had been a wealthy landowner in the late 1800s, known for his ruthless business practices and his unyielding desire for power. He had made his fortune by any means necessary, often at the expense of others. But it was one particular betrayal that had doomed the family. Thomas had been involved in a bitter rivalry with another landowner, a man named Samuel Ward. The two had once been friends, but greed and ambition had turned them into enemies. According to the story, Thomas had betrayed Samuel in a land deal, swindling him out of his property and leaving him and his family destitute. The betrayal had ruined Samuel, and not long after, he died under mysterious circumstances. On his deathbed, it was said that Samuel had cursed the Calloway family, vowing that they would never find peace, that their descendants would suffer for Thomas's treachery. It sounded like something out of a Gothic novel, dramatic, tragic, but hardly believable. Still, the story lingered in Erin's mind. There had to be more to it, more than just a dying man's vengeful words. The coincidences were too eerie, the misfortunes too consistent. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Erin set out to uncover the truth about her family's past. The deeper she dug, the more she realized how much her family had hidden from her. There were old letters, diaries, and documents that had been passed down through generations, carefully guarded and rarely discussed. Most of the family had tried to distance themselves from the past, choosing to ignore the curse rather than confront it. But Erin wasn't willing to do that anymore. She needed answers. She began with the family records, tracing her lineage back to Thomas Calloway. As she read through the old documents, she found that the stories were true, or at least based on real events. Thomas had indeed swindled Samuel Ward out of his land, and the rivalry between them had been well documented. But there was something more, something darker that hadn't been part of the family lore. Through letters and journals, Erin discovered that Thomas's betrayal had gone beyond a simple business deal. He had conspired with corrupt officials to frame Samuel for a crime he didn't commit, embezzlement, leading to Samuel's imprisonment. By the time Samuel was released, his health had deteriorated, and his family had been left in ruin. The curse, it seemed, wasn't just about the land. It was about the destruction of an entire family, a betrayal that had ripped lives apart. But there was another layer to the story, something that had been buried even deeper. In her search, Erin found letters written by Samuel's wife, Abigail. Abigail had been a deeply spiritual woman, and in her grief, she had turned to dark, ancient rituals in an attempt to bring justice for her husband's death. It was Abigail, not Samuel, who had cursed the Calloway family, using an old, forbidden form of magic. Her curse had been specific, tied to the bloodline, meant to ensure that no descendant of Thomas Calloway would ever prosper without suffering great loss. Erin felt a chill run down her spine as she read Abigail's final letter. In it, Abigail had written, "I do not curse them out of hate, but out of justice. The Calloway name will bear the weight of their ancestors' sins until one of their own seeks redemption and breaks the chain." For the first time, Erin realized the curse wasn't just an abstract concept. It was something real, something tangible, passed down through generations. And according to Abigail's letter, it could be broken. But how? What kind of redemption was required? Determined to find out, Erin delved deeper into the family's history, searching for any clue that might lead her to the answer. It wasn't until she came across a forgotten family diary, written by her great-grandfather, the son of Thomas Calloway, that she began to understand. The diary told of Thomas's final years, filled with regret and paranoia. He had been haunted by nightmares, plagued by illness, and consumed by guilt over what he had done to Samuel Ward. But his pride had prevented him from ever making amends. In the end, he had died a bitter man, never seeking forgiveness, never offering restitution for his betrayal. That Erin realized was the key. The curse had been fueled by Thomas's refusal to acknowledge his wrongdoing, by his failure to make amends. If the curse was ever going to be broken, someone had to do what Thomas had refused to do. Erin knew what she had to do. She tracked down the descendants of Samuel Ward, a task that proved easier than she had expected. The Ward family, it seemed, had fared no better than the Calloways. Generations of hardship and loss had followed them as well, as though the curse had touched both families, forever entwining their fates. When Erin finally met the last living descendant of Samuel Ward, a woman named Caroline, she felt a strange sense of connection. Caroline had known nothing of the curse, nothing of the ancient feud between their families. She had lived her life unaware of the history that had shaped both their destinies. But when Erin explained the story, when she revealed the truth about Thomas Calloway's betrayal and the curse that had followed them for generations, something shifted. Together, Erin and Caroline visited the land that had once belonged to Samuel Ward, now a forgotten, overgrown plot of earth. It was there, in the quiet of that desolate place, that Erin spoke the words she had rehearsed so many times in her mind. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking, "for everything my family did to yours, for the pain we caused, the lives we destroyed. I'm here to make it right." Caroline stood beside her, silent, but there was an understanding between them, a shared acknowledgement of the past and the weight they both carried. In that moment, Erin felt something lift. The air around them seemed lighter, the heaviness in her chest finally easing. She didn't know if the curse was truly broken, if centuries of pain and suffering could be undone by a single act of contrition. But she knew she had taken the first step toward redemption, toward healing the wounds her family had caused. As they left the land behind, Erin felt hope for the first time in years. She had confronted the curse, the legacy of betrayal that had haunted her family for generations. And though the future was uncertain, she knew one thing. She would no longer live in the shadow of her ancestors' sins. The curse, it seemed, had lost its power.